Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Chad.
And I'm Evan.
And you are listening to our recap of The Hod King, Book 3 in the Books of Babel Quartet by Josiah Bancroft.
Wow, what an incredible series this is turning out to be. I'm so happy we're reading this.
Me too. I kind of gave you all of the kudos last time for being the best book picker ever. And you know what? I'm just going to lap that mulberry bush again because, dear God, these books are incredible. So they're the most unique books I think I've ever read.
I know I was kind of patting myself on the back the other day. I was just like, oh man, I think I just picked out of the blue Chad's new favorite fantasy series.
You did.
I'm so proud of myself.
You should be, dude. And that's like, and not to be like my book, hoity toity, but like, I run a book podcast and I read a lot of books. And these books are, if not at the very tippy top, number one on my list, they're in the top three.
They're
for sure.
Nudging in there. Absolutely.
Oh, hard and heavy. And they just keep getting better.
They do. I mean, I want to admit something real quick, though. I was a bit worried headed into this particular book that it wouldn't hold up to Arm of the Sphinx. I loved Arm of the Sphinx. Right before I cracked it open, I was like, okay, let's see. I mean, this
book
go
2 in the trilogy?
Right. But Bancroft has proved to me he not only has an outstanding imagination, but an obvious ability to put out consistently good work.
And not only that, but he thought about this series the perfect amount before starting to write it. I feel like I've read some books that you can tell the author thought about it too much, or it was like stewing in their brain for 25 years before they actually put it down on paper. Or some authors that didn't think about it enough, and you're like, this story is kind of confusing and not well fleshed out. It's just perfect. It's not so much that I'm drowning in new words and story building and depth of history that doesn't add to the story in any way, but it doesn't have none of that either. Just enough to hook me and keep me going the whole way through it.
You know what? I feel like, and we can talk to Bancroft a little bit more about this, and I don't really know how to phrase this question to him, but it feels to me like he just doesn't have a filter and he just lets all of his imagination, like everything he thinks of, he's just like, all right, we're just going to fit it in. We're just going to make it work. Because there's so much stuff in here that's just totally bonkers that I would never have thought of in a million years. And it just slides right into place. It just makes sense in this world. Like all of that being said, though, this wasn't exactly the book I was expecting it to be. It wasn't bad at all. It was really, really great. But while we had a bit of movement to different kingdoms in the previous volume, we're mostly in one spot here, which is Pelphia, level 5 of an alleged number of 64 levels in this tower. But of course, even though there's a sort of feeling of stasis here, like physically, there's a lot happening, a lot of growth for our main characters, and something we haven't seen yet in this series, which would be sort of like time shifts between narratives.
Yeah, he tries something new in this book, I feel like, with his the flow of his story and how he goes about, I think, trying to not make his storylines clash and be too confusing, and the way he separates them. It's very unique and
Well, one of the really cool things about structuring the book in the way that he did was that it allowed him to have not only a number of different like cliffhangers, but it made us as the readers have to wait like hundreds of pages for multiple cliffhangers to really find out what was going on, or like what became of Volita, or the state of the art, or Edith, or Senlin.
Plummets from the port dock
with Aaron like sitting with a shot in the head, Volita in her arms.
Gosh.
Yeah, and so like you could do that at the end and have everything pile towards the end, kind of like with like the end of Senlin Ascends, but he decided to do it a little differently. And I loved it. And it kind of threw me off at first, obviously. Like I was a little worried that we were going to get kind of like a season 4 of Stranger Things kind of thing where you've got all these little, yeah, you're right. But people listening know that have watched it. You got all these like little tributaries, right? And you're like, how is this all going to, am I even going to remember like what everyone was doing by the time that this is all sewn up? But I think Bancroft did a really excellent job at keeping everything in place, even though it was separated at times.
Yeah, I agree in retrospect. I will say that while I was reading it, I was definitely like, okay, what? Like, did my book come with a couple chapters missing or something? Like, it confused me when we started jumping back and forth and the timeline started getting a little bit more mixed around. And like I said, in retrospect, he pulled it off and it worked out very well. But there was a certain point of the book that I was confused for a little bit, thinking that I either missed something or my book was missing some pages or something.
I totally agree, and I think we're in really good hands here. Also, keeping everybody in Pelphia, kind of when I started to realize, oh, I think everybody's just hanging out here for the most part. I was a little bit initially like, ah, man, there's so many other ringdoms that I wanted to explore. So I was kind of bummed out about that. But on the flip side of that, I think it was also a pretty good idea. It gave everybody a chance to breathe, kind of, and like we could really just sit and kind of develop everything. And it feels like chess pieces kind of being moved on a board. This is book 3 of 4. I think a lot of the movement in this series is going to happen in this next book, which is, I mean, it's called The Fall of Babel, for one thing. So whatever that means, it's huge. It's a gigantic book. So
It's a ginormous book.
I've already started reading it. Whatever.
Oh, did you?
Just like the first chapter.
I've been refraining to because but it's been hard because I really, really wanted to. I agree with what you just said in that we sit in one location most of the time during this book, more than any of the other books. And I think that was a really intentional and smart move by Josiah when he was writing it, as the other books seemed certainly about the people, but it was very focused on the tower and its mysteries being revealed. Whereas this book, the focus changes a little bit. So it's not so much about the towers, the mysteries that we're unearthing as we go along, but it's more about the people. And in order to kind of have that focus and really get out the shovel and start digging into the characters, we need the environment to stay the same so we're not constantly drowning in a sea of new environment, new things, new places, new things to wonder at. It's just like, okay, nope, we're in one spot, we know what it looks like around us, we can kind of move on more to focus and dig a little bit deeper into the characters.
We're not dungeon crawling.
Right, we're not dungeon crawling, even though we
I love
definitely
dungeon
do some crawling later in this book.
Well, speaking of crawling, let's get to our recap. And we'll timestamp the recap if you want. You could skip the whole thing and you could just go straight to our discussion, or you can sit back, relax, and listen to Chad's sweet, sultry voice.
Oh, thank you, Evan. The book begins in Pelphia, 5th ringdom of the Tower of Babel. Following the Sphinx's orders, Senlin poses as a brooding, boorish boskin named Cyril Penfield, in order to discover why her mechanical butterflies, which act as her eyes and ears throughout the tower, have gone missing, specifically in the Colosseum, where Hods are forced to fight for the Pelphians' amusement. Senlin has been instructed to send any information he gleans to Byron in the form of mechanical moths, and to neglect looking for his wife Maria, who has married a duke named Wilhelm Pell. Before arriving in Pelphia, Senlin asks Byron to relay personal recordings to Edith without the Sphinx knowledge. Byron agrees. Pelphia is a ringdom known for ever-changing fashion, frequent parties, and insatiable celebrity culture. Upon his arrival, Senlin attends the Colosseum, but immediately attempts to gain access into a gentleman's club called the Coterie, of which the Duke is a member. After being refused entry, he sends his card to the Duke asking for an audience. At his hotel, Senlin requests the staff give him every newspaper over the past year and learns of his wife's Maria's new title, the Mermaid, and of her celebrity status among the ringdom, the result of her uncouth piano playing and beautiful voice. She has been playing shows at a theater, but was absent for a number of months. The newspaper blames her absence on a sickness, claiming that Duke Pell has been attempting to find her a cure. Against his better judgment, Senlin attends a play about Maria's life where he is depicted as an oafish boor who preys upon Maria, while the Duke is depicted as her savior. He leaves the play early, and on his way home witnesses a Hod being assaulted by 2 men in an alley. Senlin rescues the Hod, but upon being freed, the Hod kills the 2 men with a brick before shouting, "Come the Hod King," and running off into the night. Senlin goes back to the hotel and reports the incident to the authorities. The next morning, he is interviewed by a General Andreas Eichengrahl and a wakeman named Georgine Haste. Haste accuses Senlin of fabricating the story, claiming Senlin murdered the 2 men himself. He is nearly arrested when a note from Duke Wilhelm arrives, inviting Senlin to speak with him the following day at the Coterie Club. Senlin meets with the Duke the next day and presents him with a business proposition to sell stocks of Maria's talent. Pell isn't certain about the idea and says they must get Maria's permission, inviting Senlin to a party that evening where she will be in attendance. They watch 2 Hods fight in the Colosseum, and Senlin realizes one of the Hods is none other than his old friend Taru. Back at his hotel, he receives a slapping telegram from the Sphinx, reprimanding him for not lying low. He asks the concierge for a suit and an ugly mask that he can wear to the party that evening, and is on his way when he meets Eidengrau, who explains that from Senlin's description of the Hod, they were able to arrest the murderer, who is scheduled to be executed. Senlin goes to the Duke's party and is finally reunited with Maria. They go on a cart ride, another of the Sphinx's clever machines presented as a fun ride, but is in actuality a mechanism to coerce the general population to assist in the tower's upkeep. While on the cart ride, Maria tells Senlin to take off the mask, as she knew it was him all along. Senlin is caught off guard and says he has come to rescue her, but only if she wants to leave. He tells her of his numerous mistakes of the past year, including the kiss he shared with Edith. Maria explains that she has resigned to her new life in Pelphia and that he should go home. In complicated spirits, Senlin returns to his hotel and sends a message to Edith. At the Wall of Recompense, and with Senlin in attendance, Eigengrau presents a number of the Hod accused, sentenced to death by firing squad. Senlin tries to explain that none of them are the actual Hod he witnessed murdering the two men. He attempts to stop the execution but fails, and is witness to a line of Hods, including a child, whose debt he tries to buy, being executed. Senlin returns to the Colosseum and attempts to send a note to his friend Taru, saying that he will try to rescue him. He wants Taru to throw the match so Senlin will win a bet, his winnings being the ownership of Taru. He ascends to the Coterie Club where he meets with Wilhelm, who tells Senlin that he has managed to convince Maria to sell herself as stock. When asked how he convinced her, Wilhelm threatens Senlin and tells him not to worry about it. A group of women dance for Senlin in the club to celebrate their business arrangement, but one of the dancing girls recognizes Senlin as Mud, the pirate captain, and after a short chase, Senlin is captured. Wilhelm forces a mask on Senlin and throws him and Taru both into the Hod Trail. He also reveals that Senlin has a daughter, and tells Senlin that if he ever escapes the Black Trail and returns, he will slit his daughter's throat. Senlin is led through the Black Trail by Taru, who was shot in the leg during a skirmish near the gates. They come across a camp of Hod zealots and pledge their allegiance to the Hod King. Senlin is recognized by Sadiq, the Hod he rescued, and is momentarily lauded as a hero. But another Hod, none other than Senlin's old employer, Finn Goal, outs Senlin as Thomas Senlin and Mud, the pirate captain. The story shifts focus to the rest of Senlin's crew, manning the Sphinx flagship, the State of the Art, and tasked with retrieving Pelphia's copy of the bricklayer's paintings. We find Volita training for high society etiquette with a frustrated Byron as she prepares to pose as the Sphinx's niece upon their arrival to the Ringdom. The State of the Art enters the Pelphian port with much fanfare, and Irene and Volita depart with their hosts, the Marquis de Clark and his daughter Xenia. Volita makes a name for herself in the papers by running across the city rooftops, where she meets Prince Francis. She is horrified later to learn that a young woman, none other than Commissioner Pound's daughter, has fallen to her death in an attempt to emulate her. Volita attends a party with the prince and is invited to attend a concert of Maria's at the Vivant. While watching the performance, the prince produces a backstage pass and encourages Volita to use it. Volita goes backstage, meets Maria, and explains that she is Senlin's friend and here to help her leave Pelphia. Maria again refuses the offer, and Volita learns of Olivet, Maria and Senlin's baby. Maria returns to the stage, leaving Volita alone to conclude that Maria is staying in Pelphia only to protect her daughter. Meanwhile, Prince Francis instructs his friend to lock Irene in a closet so he can corner Volita backstage. He traps her in Maria's dressing room, and in the ensuing scuffle, shoots her in the head. Irene breaks free from the closet and rushes backstage, coming upon the scene of the prince and Volita's seemingly lifeless body. Enraged at the sight of Volita, she stabs the prince to death with a coat rack. Realizing Volita is still alive, Irene covers her with a coat and rushes back to the State of the Art, knowing only the Sphinx can save Volita. When she gets to the port, however, she sees the State of the Art blasted from the sky by the Ararat. We then go back to Senlin and learn about the bounty Luke Marat has placed on his head for destroying the Golden Zoo. Gol and Taru elect to take Senlin to Marat, and they travel together to Mola Ambit, near the 15th Ringdom of Nineveh, via air vents to avoid other Hods. The three are attacked by a chimney cat, which together they are able to kill. Senlin begins to suspect that the Sphinx knew he would fail on his mission in Pelphia and gets sent on the Black Trail to Marat. The story shifts to Edith before the state-of-the-art is shot from the sky. She befriends Pelphia's wakeman Georgine and saves a young Hod sent up in a balloon to repair the Ringdom's mechanical son. She requests Pelphia's painting from the king, suggesting the Sphinx will give Pelphia a new technology in return, but the king keeps stalling, saying he can't find the painting. She then learns of Senlin's fate being forced onto the Hod Trail. Working with Eigengrau, Edith discovers a hidden chamber in the Colosseum where the Hods have been working in secret to build a mysterious machine capable of digging through the walls. Haste, the tower's wakeman, is eating dinner with Edith aboard the state-of-the-art when Edith learns that she is actually a zealot and is working with the Hods to take over the tower. A fight ensues between the two, and Edith barely emerges victorious. Redelman, the former Red Hand, now working as Edith's pilot, sees Eigengrau leading a group of soldiers onto the ship. He proceeds to lobotomize them with a needle. Byron is also accosted by soldiers but releases the Sphinx protector machine, Ferdinand, who proceeds to playfully crush them to death but dies in the process. Byron finds his courage and comes out to help, and seeing Ferdinand dying, drives Eigengrau from the ship after shooting him. Our separate storylines become one, as the Ararat blows the state-of-the-art from the sky. Redelman, however, has learned of the ship's levitators and uses them to come back into the fray. They rise, releasing the airship's full destructive power upon the port and the Ararat both, reducing it all to dust. Edith sees the escaping Eigengrau and crushes him to death. Back on the ship, at Iren's insistence, Redelman revives Volita by injecting her with the Sphinx's magical machine juice. We learn that Ferdinand was actually a dog that the Sphinx had transformed into a machine. Using the port's destruction as a distraction, the Hods allegedly revolt in the city, leaving the Ringdom in shambles. Edith learns that Pelphia's painting has been stolen and gets what information she can concerning the Hod King from the king of Pelphia. She then goes to Duke Wilhelm's house and rescues Maria and her daughter. Edith breaks the Duke's arm in the process and threatens a painful death should he attempt pursuit. The crew returns to the Sphinx's lair to find the heavy doors closed. This is very distressing, especially to Byron, but they continue on their mission to collect the rest of the Sphinx's paintings. Senlin, Taru, and Gol arrive at Luke Marat's camp to convince him of Senlin's sincere transformation into a Hod zealot after telling him of the Sphinx's contractual trickery. This lie is helped by the knowledge that Senlin saved a Hod and tried to stop the firing squad from killing many more. The story ends with the revelation that the Hod King is actually a gigantic machine capable of tunneling through the tower. Our crew is divided. Volita is damaged, perhaps beyond repair. The Sphinx has gone dark, and Senlin is living minute to minute, hoping to not be unmasked for the traitor he really is. Much has been accomplished, but the crew is still walking a knife's edge, barely thwarting death and discovery at every turn.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
Those
that
are
is
the
a
right
lot.
words.
So many things happened in that book. I want to talk about Volita real quick. We're just going to jump straight to that. That was one of the most intense things that has happened in the last 3 books. I thought Volita had a bunch of plot armor, and maybe Volita does, but in that instance, she gets shot in the head.
Oh man, I thought she got shot to dead. What did you think?
I thought she was dead. I mean,
too.
you get shot in the head,
Yeah.
right?
And then Eren comes upon her and sees the destruction left over from their fight and the blood, lot of blood pooling around her body. I was like, she's done.
And then kills that prince with a coat
Oh
rack.
my gosh. Like, and I don't know what sort of coat rack you had in mind, but I have like a little like shelf in my room that it's kind of square, but one of the corners of it has like a towering thing up. So I didn't imagine like a single coat rack, but kind of just like a big whole rack, like a shelf, and just like jammed the corner of it through it was grisly in my mind. And a ginormous wound.
I was thinking of that part in The Departed when Leonardo DiCaprio like jams that magazine rack in that guy's face. And he throws him through the fridge. I was kind of thinking of that. Yeah, Eren is so badass. I love Eren.
Me too. She is awesome.
Oh, and one thing that we forgot to mention in our recap, because obviously, I mean, we were gonna miss some small details in the recap.
Course.
But I mean, this isn't even that small of a detail. But Eren and Anna That little love affair
Oh
there.
yeah, I
Love
have that
that.
actually in my questions. I was like,
Oh, really?
what do you think is going to happen?
I don't know, but I love it. I love it so much. Like
Me
Aaron is
too.
great. I quickly becoming one of my favorite characters. I like Anna a lot. I want to see more of Anna. I like how at the end of this book, the crew is just a little bit different. And there's a little bit different at the end of the last one. And it's just,
Yep.
it's almost like this found family trope that's kind of happening. Like
Yeah.
everyone's kind of settling into their places with each other. And there's
But
real,
then
real bonds
evolving
here.
within those places.
Yeah.
And some
Ah,
bonds are like growing and some are not lessening, but just like becoming different. Like the connection between each one, the roles that they play in each other's lives are kind of changing. Especially, I think a big changer event was Edith becoming captain. She kind of sees
yeah.
everyone kind of starts seeing her as being a little bit different. I almost feel kind of a little sorry for Edith as she seems the loneliest of the crew.
Right, I got that feeling too. She doesn't get to go off with Aaron and Volita, but she makes a friend too. But I mean, it doesn't
Yeah, but
pan
then her
out
friend
very well. Yeah.
is that she has to kill her by ripping her own arm off and beating her to death with it. So cool.
Since most of this book takes place in one spot, what did you think about Pelphia? What were your thoughts on this just the city as a whole?
I think they're kind of probably the most normal ringdom in the all of the tower because they're not at the very bottom and like the basement where they're just like a bunch of poor people or tourists being tricked into free beer. It's
Right.
like there actually is some power in Pelphia. They're just wealthy enough that we kind of have like a regular almost arrangement of class systems and kind of a normal-ish city. Like it's pompous and wealthy enough to be way too full of itself, but it's pretty regular. It was a good setting for what needed to happen in this book. What did you think of Pelphia?
I don't know. I was under the impression from the little that was said about this ringdom in the two books previous that Pelphia was a sort of like legitimate high society. And it kind of is, but there seems to be this sort of undercurrent of like perversion and superficiality that runs through everything, like the entire population. It's kind of gross. Like he
It's
talks
super
about
gross.
there's like trash everywhere. Like no one's like picking up after themselves. It almost felt to me like if you had left a city with quite a bit of money to its own devices,
Yes.
like there was no real accountability anywhere. There was no sense of responsibility or like real work ethic. It's just a bunch of
Right.
spoiled rich people like running around in this city.
Exactly. They're high enough in the tower to just think the world of themselves.
I think the scene that like really showed exactly the vibe that this was remember when Senlin is kind of trying to get into that. I think he's trying to get into that party and he's kind of dressed in a tuxedo and he's got the mask on and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And there's like a bunch of people crowded at the gate trying to get into this party. Everyone that's trying to gain access is being lifted on some kind of elevation device, like a chair or like a table or like a big structure or something. And they're all jostling around. And it's like total chaos. And then one of them like falls off. And it's such a good way of showing that like these people are all so pompous and this whole society that they've kind of built up is kind of like being held together with like popsicle sticks. It's not really.
Like actual high society. It's being held together by the pretentious threads that the very same threads that weave their clothing that kind of holds their holds their
Yeah.
society together as well. They're just really into surface level things and just being very materialistic.
I liked watching Volita navigate all of that. She's just like, I don't care about any of this. Like, you're
Any
all
of this.
ridiculous. Like, this is so stupid. I thought it was, like you said, like a good setting. And also, like you said, I mean, they're up on like the fifth rung, but that's not really that high if you think about it.
No, not at all. Out of what,
There's
66?
59 more levels of
Right.
this tower. So I think at some point, too, I can't remember exactly where it was in the book, but somebody kind of referred to Pelphia as like a bottom rung level even.
Uh-huh.
It's like they think that they're really up high and like they're this very high class thing, but they're not. And they just happen to have a really low, super low underclass, which is the Hods.
Right. The juxtaposition between them and the lower realms allows them to look at themselves as very high society.
Yeah.
But they're really, I think any of the levels above them would just call them posers. They're just trying so hard. Like when they show up, when the Sphinx is the state of art shows up there, and like they're welcomed with much fanfare and like basically a parade, and the king is kind of being all silly, like they're just trying so hard. And the king even mentions, I'm glad that the Sphinx realized that this was the place to come to, like we are really the happening place. When it's like, man, you have 59 ringdoms above you, probably all of them being more high society than yourself, with the exception of like Bosqueville or whatever, that where all the boring accountant lives.
I love how the Sphinx had Senlin pose as a really boring person from a really boring place. You're going to be posing as somebody really kind of like you, honestly.
Right.
But it really, honestly, like, I mean, I don't want to dig too deep into it, but like, it really kind of made a lot of Senlin's other qualities kind of shine, because he was posing as that, but he's not really like that. When they serve him like lukewarm water, you get the impression in like the very first book that Senlin is uptight enough to only want to drink that, but no, he like knocks back some booze later because he's
Right.
like stressed out, and it's just, it kind of really props him up a little bit more, and it's like, okay, at least he's not like this bad, he's not this much of a bore, he's not, Senlin's got a lot of bite to him, especially in this
Absolutely.
book. I mean, there are multiple moments in this book where I'm surprised at Senlin's proactivity, like the initiative that he takes.
And not only that, but how he sees himself. So this is from page 335, and this is where Senlin realizes that the Sphinx sent him to Pelphia, not necessarily thinking that he would have any amount of success discovering why her butterflies were going missing, but because he would probably actually be ousted and thrown into the Black Trail. And he says Senlin saw clearly that the Sphinx had put him in an impossible position quite on purpose. Then he says about himself, he was the sort of man who climbed immeasurable towers and got to the bottom of bottomless libraries. Yet despite his obstinance, Senlin had proved time and time again to be adaptable and resourceful in a manner few were. And that's like him kind of talking to himself, which I think is a really cool change of the kind of bumbling, insecure oaf almost that he viewed himself as in the first two books.
I mean, like, think of everything he's gone through. I mean, because people kind of chide him sometimes, and they're like, "Wow, you've really made no shortage of enemies here, Tom. Like, oh my God, you're kind of like failing your way to the top here." But at the same time, like the obstacle, you got to hand it to him, right? Like the amount of obstacles that he's gone through. Some of it by luck, obviously, and some of it he's kind of like he's had a good crew, he's had good friends, he's had a lot of help from people that are way more powerful than anybody that's maybe not on his side, like in particular the Sphinx. But at the same time, he has shown a lot of initiative, and he has shown a lot of ingenuity and taken a lot of risks that have panned out that might not have panned out. It's really cool to watch this growth. But I do want to just throw this in here real quick. And it is a moment of self-realization for him. He's able to, in hindsight, notice what he did here. But when he talks to Maria, which I think you and I should probably talk about right now,
Yeah,
that
I have
whole
a question
conversation.
about
Okay,
that.
cool. He realizes much later that he was being so self-absorbed in that conversation he was having with her. And I went back and read the conversation, and it's totally true. He's talking about himself the whole
entire time.
He barely asks her any other questions other than like ones that are directly related to why he's there. And obviously they don't have a lot of time to talk or anything, but it's just, I felt bad for him. I really did. Like, I mean, also I felt like he should have been smarter, and he probably should have like taken a breath or something. But like, I did feel really bad that he, in hindsight, was realizing, oh my God, like if I would have just let her talk, if I would have just like
not only listened, but listened, capital L listened, like listened with my ears sort of thing.
And Volita was able to figure it out immediately.
Right. I mean, she was able to figure it out without even really talking to Maria. I mean, she was pretty perceptive. Yeah, Senlin missed out. She was saying so many things by saying so few things. And Senlin missed it all entirely with his focus upon himself. And it was cool that in retrospect, he did realize, because I also didn't realize that she was like, I knew that she was probably trying to protect him or something. There was something at foot there, but I didn't realize that she was actually telling him things that she wasn't saying with her words.
Yeah, I was fooled too. I thought,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. maybe we're just dumb guys. Like,
yeah, I don't
like
know. I mean, we were in Senlin's brain being taken on Senlin's journey. And like, he was very much focused on himself and his own trek through the tower and the mistakes that he made, which I thought that he was a little unnecessarily harsh on himself for the mistakes. He kept
Maybe.
making like all these mistakes, and it's like, bro, you have failed your way to the top of the tower in fashion that no one else has. Like, what do you think about his self-deprecation?
I think he was doing it so that in a way it was him kind of being like, all right, I know that you've probably made some mistakes, Maria, but like so have I. He's just like assuming that Maria has
Right.
also like, you know what I mean? Like I think he was like preemptively trying to
Oh, forgive
forgive
her.
her for like for you know
Sure.
what I mean, which was also just like super self-absorbed and shitty of him.
Right. And it was coming from a place of like, and also I hope that you're preemptively forgiving me for all my mistakes.
Totally. Yeah. I
Like,
mean, I guess that's kind of a hard take on it, but that was what I was thinking reading it.
okay. Two questions. One, were you on to the Sphinx in that she was sending Senlin to Pelphia for ulterior motives and that she was going to push him, that she thought that he was going to go to the Black Trail? And two, what is her end game there? I don't quite get it. I'm kind of flirting around it in my brain, but what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't think that initially because kind of like you said, we are in Senlin's brain. It seemed like the Sphinx, while worried that Senlin was going to go off and do this, like when I was reading it, it seemed like the Sphinx did have kind of full confidence that Senlin was
Yeah.
reliable to a point, and that's why she was sending him out. That was kind of like my whole thing. And the Sphinx has like, these cameras everywhere, for lack of a better word, like microphones, like ways of making sure Senlin doesn't do this. So in my head, like when I was initially reading those first few chapters, I was thinking Senlin's not going to get as far in this as he thinks he's going to, and the Sphinx has some sort of leverage or control over this situation as it stands. So I wasn't really expecting that at all. And like maybe that's not the case, but let's assume that it is so I can answer your next question, which is why? Like why would she
Yeah.
knowingly
What's her
let
end
him?
game?
I think what it is that while Senlin was able to get some information, the Sphinx knew there wasn't enough information in Pelphia, and there was really no other like organic way to introduce him to the Black Trail, which is where he ultimately
Oh,
needed to go.
she needs like
So
an inside man.
right, so and he wasn't going to do it willingly because he's maybe she let him get it out of his system. Like she's super conniving. Like she's thinking like
Totally.
10 steps ahead here. So I think that ultimately she needs Senlin in this position of kind of like subservience to Mara so that she can have someone that close to him that is reliable.
Right. She's like, your true use to me will be if you can somehow use your incredible, seemingly endless, beguiling wit to get on the inside of Luke Marat's team. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
And he's fairly expendable in my opinion.
Totally.
Right. Like I mean, she's got all of this influence. She's got Edith, who is just objectively more capable than Senlin. You know what I mean? So like I feel like at worst the Sphinx sees Senlin as kind of a useful idiot.
Hmm.
And then at best someone that she can like put a decent amount of confidence in, but is mostly expendable and like not really that big of a deal. And I think that that's like another reason why she was willing to show her face to Senlin and Volita, because you know it's mentioned in the book that like Senlin and Volita have like different dispositions than Edith and Aaron. She's treating each person the way that they need to be treated in order to fulfill her own ends. Like she's a
Right.
really really cool character.
Yeah. After listening to your answer of my question, you're totally right. 'Cause I'm kind of like taking it a step farther now in my brain. It's a full on win win for the Sphinx. Her plan with Senlin. If Senlin loses and ends up dying along the Black Trail, what happens? Well, all of his crew, Edith, Felita, Adam, which we'll talk about later, that whole crew gets turned into zealots. She has a martyr now. You like
Oh yeah,
now
I
they're
didn't
going to
even
be
think about that.
passionately
Yeah.
working for her as just opposed to like contractually working for her. And then if he wins and actually gets inside, which he's done, then now she has an inside man and she's got, he's far more valuable to her. So yeah, that was a really good stroke of genius on the Sphinx's part.
What did you think about the blinder that Willem put on Senlin's head before
Oh,
making him take that
goodness.
trail? I hated that.
I hated that so much.
How did he not freak out like way more than he did? Like I don't know.
I
Maybe he
mean,
was just like kind of stunned and didn't know. I would have lost it. There's no. Oh my god, I hated that. Like, oh
if you
no.
read the first chapter really, really in detail of him, his first chapter with Taru on the Black Trail. He is freaking the fuck
You're
out.
right. You're right.
Like,
Yeah.
what is he singing? Or like he's having Taru tell him what the messages mean, interpret the Hod. Like he is doing everything in his power to not have a freaking fit because he is, I think, very much freaking out inside. He's just like, hold it together, hold it together.
There's no way. I mean,
Oh
it
my
was already it's already
gosh.
like bad enough that you're going into that situation, but for the person who is basically holding your wife hostage to put a bell over your head, basically, and just oh man, that was
Oh my god.
it was this
There's
it
even a
was we're like dragging Senlin as low as he can go at that.
yeah.
I felt so bad for him.
Me too. He even mentions like almost comedically at one point, like what'll happen is if is it throw up? He was like thinking like, what if happens if he throws
Oh
up or
yeah,
something? And he's like,
yeah.
he's so screwed. I don't know. I'm not very claustrophobic of a person, but I do really value my eyesight.
Hearing.
That's just yeah. And not only okay, it's one thing to be blind in your own home, but it's another thing to be in very dangerous territory and be without your sight. Like, oh my gosh, he keeps thinking that he's gonna stumble off of a cliff.
I know. What would we have done without Taru there?
Yeah.
Like just
Okay.
wandered around with that thing. Oh my god. Nope.
It was almost nice of Wilhelm when he takes Senlin, buckets him, and throws him onto the Hod Trail that he gives him a friend. Like it was almost weird, like elongating his suffering or something. I wasn't quite sure what his game was there. He was like, I'm gonna give you the worst possible scenario, but also like here's a buddy to help you.
I mean, I think that he just was so confident that the Black Trail is like the worst possible place to
Just
be.
gonna
It
eat him
didn't. It
alive.
just didn't even matter, really.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, he was so rushed to do that he forgot to even brand him.
that was such a wild scene. Like, I wasn't even expecting Senlin to run. Really, I don't know what it was, but for some reason, I just felt like he wasn't going to. And then when he started to, he's like swinging down into the Coliseum and stuff. I was just like, damn, look at him go! Like, this
I
is
know
crazy.
he's proven his like a physical level upness a few times in the fight once with the Hods. He like takes on two guys and does a great job. And then when he's running out, he's like throws himself off a balcony, lands on a
Yeah.
couple of people. He's killing his game.
I mean, he did train with Aaron for a pretty long time.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
he's been in like multiple sword fights, and it makes sense. I was just
He's
for some
become a
reason,
pirate.
right? Like for some reason, I was just like, oh, there he goes. Wow.
I fully did not expect him to get away though.
No.
Do you like how he was ousted by that dancer woman who turned out to be the gal?
And it's funny. I was going to ask you if there was anything about the book that you didn't like. So I'll just answer my own question real
Okay,
quick
and then I'll
before you
answer
answer
that because I
yours.
do
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't have too many criticisms about this. I really do feel like this is just a masterwork. It's just such a tightly wound plot. I mean, but anyway, yeah, there's a few things like, and this wouldn't be a nerdy fantasy podcast without digging into some stuff, even if there's
Of course.
small details. But yeah, like the daughter is just pretty convenient. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I mean, there's like how many people in this tower? Is there like a separate book we're gonna read of like her escapades to like get to this point where she's like now a belly dancer and this like
Because you can't even land at Pelphia.
I don't know. I thought that was just kind of like, all right, like, yeah, I guess like we'll bring her back so she can. I don't know. And another one was Senlin and Toru just happening across Fingal.
Not only that, but right before they happen upon the Hod that Senlin saved.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
happenstance,
a really good.
happenstance.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, he wastes no words in explaining that the Black Trail is like hundreds of miles of like these interweaving trails with like
A labyrinth.
thousands and thousands of these Hods like all over the place, and it's just like it's awfully convenient. But you know what? I do want to say this. Like, we don't know the extent to which the Sphinx is really planning everything here. So it could have all been like, this could all have a perfectly reasonable explanation, right? The rest of the plot is so well put together. Like, I really wouldn't fault Bancroft for these like little flashes of coincidence and convenience because they push the story on in a believable way. The rubber band that is my belief's willingness to be suspended hasn't been broken by this.
Right.
It's not like ruining the story for me, but this is like I said in a past, I think it was the first episode we did on this. It's just like convenience, like really just bugs me sometimes, where it's just like, oh, cool. I guess we'll just
that's
do that.
convenient.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
You're there. But whatever. That's really my only.
I feel you, but it's the slight annoyance at the yes, that's very convenient. I think in my mind is offset by the awesome lesson that Josiah Bancroft is attempting to portray there. even though it's weeks, months, or even years in the past, especially past misdeeds, have a way of coming back to biting you. Like you will
Ah, I
get
love
yours,
that.
you know? Like
Damn.
it'll come back and hit you.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it for sure.
All right, so things that I didn't like about the book. And I'm only going to say thing. There shouldn't really have been an S at the end of that sentence because there's only one. And I think that you're going to disagree with me. I didn't like Felita the first 200, 300 pages. Like, honestly,
Really?
until about when she gets shot in the head. Like the theater is fine, maybe a little bit before then, but she just okay. Do you remember in the Winter Night when Vasya in book like first in the first like one and a half books, Vasya is just kind of selfish, only thinking about herself and doesn't think about what her actions, how they can affect her loved ones or anyone around her the entire time before she kind of like grows out of that and is like, no, I'm going to do what I don't want to do for the sake of my family. And I feel like Valita has yet to learn that lesson. Like she was just like annoying and just being like flitting all over the place. And they're like, you need to stay here, Valita. And she'd be like, okay. And the next time she's just running out the window, doesn't care about anything. Like, I don't know. She just seemed childish. And I was very annoyed with her a lot of this book.
I mean, you could make the case that that's the point.
Yeah.
Like, I see what you're saying for sure. It's like she's not very likable, but still a good character,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But yeah, I mean, it is. I think I felt a little bit of that because she's really not holding back like at all. And
No.
there's a lot of people and a lot of eyes on her. And this is like a really crucial mission.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I see what you're saying there. Yeah, she's like running around on the rooftops and stuff. Like,
Yeah. When she goes in to get introduced to the king, she like says something and she was like, she says to herself to justify it. Well, like, well, Byron said to like make a statement or like, I don't know, but it was like obviously the opposite of what he was actually meaning her. And he would never have wondered. And it works out for her. I was kind of annoyed that it worked out for her. I kind of wanted like everyone to just be like, who are you? But then, of course, she charms them and it worked out. And I don't know if there's anything that I have to say that would be critical about the book is just like, Lolita annoyed me.
I mean, I think that Valita has built up trauma from the situation she was in the first book, and she saw firsthand like how fake people could be, how willing to turn on people and stab people in the back people could be. By the time she gets into Pelphia, she's just sort of had it. Like she doesn't want to. She's over it. Like she's over all of
Okay.
this. She's over all this like superficiality. You know, the idea of like putting on a show for people. She's been doing that for how long now? She doesn't want to do it
Right.
anymore. I mean, it really makes sense. But I do totally. I mean, like it's like you could have like held like 10% of that back.
Yeah. Like she wasn't even allowed on the bridge because they didn't like trust her to not like break the rules and climb things. Like she loves climbing so much. Again, it was probably needed and she'll probably learn. I mean, this is really like dark of me, but there was like a little bit of me that was like when she
Oh my
learns
god.
that the Duke's daughter died by trying to emulate her reckless actions jumping across the roofs, you know? It was like, yeah, Valita, that's what happens when you don't think about how the effect your actions are going to have. You ended up killing someone who was, being an idiot, but like still.
Well, and also like got. Well, no, that wasn't her fault. Actually, I should not. Yeah, none of that was her fault.
What was her fault?
Like her getting shot, that wasn't her fault.
Oh
Like
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. Yeah.
That was chilling to go into a quote that was just like gave me chills. Was the prince gets her into the room, right? And he's got her backed up, and he was talking about how he like a scarf. He's on an airship, and a scarf gets taken out of his hand by the wind, and he was like, and the wind doesn't ask; it just takes what it wants.
Oh
Right then,
yeah.
like a little
No,
chill went up my spine. I was like, oh no, 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 this is bad.
that guy. I love how the prince got his comeuppance. That was great.
Oh,
That
that
was.
was so
I
great.
hope he's not alive. I hope nothing happened. Like it's
Yeah,
just
please don't have him get red-handed.
that guy sucks. So let's just we're done.
What did you think of Duke Willem?
Man, like I really thought he was pretty decent at first. Like I
Yeah.
was fooled. I mean, honestly, there was just nothing really that sketchy about him. He seemed to really love Maria. I don't know. I think that would have been a simpler story for that to have sort of just been the situation because
Mm-hmm.
then that's all buttoned up, right? Like Semlin can continue on with his mission for the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Maria's happy. Everyone's taken care of. Like I don't know why, but like, and I know we had a whole, the rest of this book and a whole other book to read. So like probably wasn't exactly the situation, but like some part of me deep down was like, maybe everybody's good in this
Yeah.
particular
And
scenario. And
kind
like,
of stoked about it.
but I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think over the course of these books, like Bancroft is constantly shining a light on not only dictators and the corrupt nature of a ruling class, but at least in Willem's case, what kind of a face like abusers can put on.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're willing to hurt
Yes.
people to get what they want, but they're not always terrible on the surface. Like they don't wear their disdain for them, like people beneath them, plain on their face. Like they're affable out in public, but they're horrible behind closed doors. Like I have a feeling that was like really validating for people reading this. He really is the fucking worst.
He's the
But he
fucking
tricked me.
worst.
Like he tricked me. He tricked
Me too. I
Senlin.
was charmed.
Right. Yeah. And I think I don't know if Bancroft was like consciously trying to do that, but I think like Willem is kind of like a little microcosm for the way that the tower really is. Like even Senlin coming to it in the
Ooh, well
very beginning
said.
of the series. Yeah, it's like right when he gets there, he thinks this is going to be great. I've heard nothing but good things about this. This is the pillar of civilization. This is awesome, but it's done nothing but hurt him since he's got
Right.
there.
Rotten to its core,
Yeah,
shiny on the
the
outside.
tower is cornering people and silencing them and constantly abusing them, and and that's what Willem is doing too. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't. Willem was a really interesting character for sure, but like I think it was like that scene when he's sitting down with Senlin. He says that he's convinced. Not Maria has like
Decided.
decided. It was like this weird choice of words where he was kind of like I talked her through it or whatever, and
Senlin catches him on it too. He calls him on it.
yeah, and then he kind of loses it, and that's like another trait of people
Yeah,
that
control.
that are very insecure and very like privileged, and you know what I mean. Like the slightest thing will like tip them off,
Right.
and like
You see the
they'll get
madman
super.
underneath.
Yeah, I don't like Willem anymore, and I
No.
would really like for him to die. Like
God,
that
it
would be
was
super
so
cool.
satisfying at the end to have Edith just go in there, break his arm, throw him through a window.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was the best.
marvelous.
And then she
Just
tells him,
marvelous.
like, if you even attempt to try to find us, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to fucking kill you. I love Edith. Edith is
Me too.
Edith is my second favorite character.
Really, who's your first?
My
Okay,
very favorite character.
finish doting
No,
upon
I
Edith.
can. I mean,
I don't want
I
to take
love
away from
Edith
her.
so much. Like, and kind of going back to what we were talking about before. I mean, she did feel very like lonely. She misses Senlin. She's got kind of mixed feelings about it. She doesn't like it in the tower.
No.
She's not. She
She's a
doesn't like.
farmer.
Yeah. And she's like in this enclosed space. Edith is hands down the most capable person in
Yeah.
this entire series,
Like the
besides
most
maybe the
well-rounded.
Sphinx. Speaking of Edith,
Oh,
we'll
who's
go
your
to my
first-
favorite.
who's your
We'll
first?
go to my
Okay,
favorite
okay.
character later. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But speaking of Edith, I really wanted to ask, what was up with the conversation between Edith and the Sphinx before they go to Pelphia? The Sphinx shows her like some robots that or like machines that like didn't really pan out or something, and these like the Sphinx is like, these are all of my failures. Like even I am fallible, or like whatever, or whatever. Yeah, whatever that was. But then the Sphinx shows her like this room or something with a ton of lightning in it. Is all of that lightning kind of bottled up in a really unstable way, and the only way to stabilize it is the bridge of Babel? Is that kind of like what's going on here?
This is a wild conversation, and I think one of the reasons that the Sphinx is letting Edith in on the fact that she has so much is also the same reason why she introduces the Red Hand right then during that scene as her captain. And she was like, we're going to need the Red Hand in order to fight the oncoming war. And I think it's to tell you that something is innately different about the Red Hand, and he possesses something. Like, it's not just a warrior that they're going to need in order to fight the oncoming fight. It's the juice that he has in him. The Sphinx calls it history in a bottle. And it can slow time. It can. So I think, I don't know, whatever is behind the door, like the bridge of Babel that they're going to use all the paintings to get into, like, it's crazy that it's more than this, like this in and of itself. So I think it's something that they're going to need to. I think the Sphinx knew that something was going to happen to her, or she was going to need to go, whatever the reason is that she's not opening the doors. I think she was like, I need them to know that this exists, because this will be the fuel that allows this mechanism, technology, whatever, to work inside of the bridge of the Babel when they get it open. And I'm not going to be able to show them there. She like leads them to it. And then she like kind of tells him a little bit about what it's made of and kind of what it does very vaguely, but like I can slow time or it affects time.
Is the red hand the bricklayer?
Oh my goodness.
There's no way. That's a
No,
wild prediction. Yeah, that's
that is a
way out of
wild
left
prediction,
field.
but
But I mean, it's he's really important. Obviously, he
he's
seems to have
really
some sort
important.
of other, like, there's some reason that he's not just a normal Wakeman. Like that.
No,
Like, there's no way.
no,
All right, so
no,
yeah, I
he's
mean, I
not.
guess we'll have to find out. Like, maybe there's just not enough
Yeah.
information
And
right
she
now.
says even that she was like, wow, I didn't know that you had this much of this stuff. She was like, oh, this is just a drop in the ocean. And then she lights it on fire. She shows them what happens to it when she lights it on fire, which it like almost becomes like alive and like wriggles around and kind of is like energy, but not.
Well, and she mentions that if all of this stuff is becomes more unstable than it already is, I guess it's like a nuke, right? I
Right.
mean, like that's basically like she's just like it's going to destroy everything if we don't. So I mean, we've got higher stakes here. This isn't just Senlin saving his wife anymore. This is the whole kit and caboodle.
Okay, maybe this is linked with a question I want to
Sorry.
ask you. No, this is good. The kitten caboodle.
Oh my god.
It is. No. Okay, so I think this is very relevant here. A question I had for you was the Red Hand. We're privy to him like alone. We're seeing him just like reading from the Troglodyte book. He's laughing at the author's getting some things incorrect as he remembers what the troglodytes are actually like. Like he knows that they're wrong and right. How the hell would he know that? Like they apparently died off like thousands of years ago or something.
Dude, maybe he's the bricklayer.
Maybe when he goes, he mentions his death multiple times. So he was dead for a long time and he talks really knowingly about what it's like to be dead.
Yeah.
So maybe he learned about the beginning of time and troglodytes from then when he was everything and nothing and everywhere and nowhere. Like, was that? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think, like we said in the last episode, if this starts to get timey-wimey, which I'm fine with it. I feel confident and comfortable reading all of this. I mean, I've got full confidence in Josiah Bancroft, but like, please let it be drip-fed because I don't even know how much more I go. Oh my god, I don't know how much more of this I can. I can only stomach like so many weird things happening. But I bet whatever it is, it'll make sense. But that is the trouble with recapping and analyzing books in a series is that even though we've got questions, even between the two of us, we might not have the whole picture here to be able to answer them. So let's just put that over on the shelf for a second. You know, we'll talk about that in the next book.
Okay. I got a wild prediction.
Okay.
A wild one.
Okay.
Okay, so what if Senlin is perhaps the bricklayer and
Oh.
The Sphinx is Edith.
What? Well, no. The Sphinx is the bricklayer's granddaughter or
We
whatever.
think,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but I don't know what anything is. Yeah.
but she doesn't show Edith her face. Maybe that's one of the reasons because there's some timey
Oh, wow.
wiminess
That is a
happening, you know?
really
Like,
wild prediction.
I
Like, damn,
know.
that is so much.
we got weird with that
Yeah,
one.
like if Josiah Bancroft is like listening to this, he's just like, you guys
Oh
are
my
so
goodness.
ridiculous. But
But I
maybe
mean,
you
you
could be
know,
right. I don't. You've been right before. I don't know.
I have on
Yeah.
some ridiculous, but I've also way more often been way wrong. Let's talk about Adam for a second, or let's talk
What
about the
about
lack of
Adam?
Adam. Were you surprised that there was no Adam?
Not
I was.
really.
Oh, sad.
I guess like I was kind of waiting for an Adam chapter at some point, like early on in the book, but then when I realized we're going in like big swaths here, like I don't know, it's just Adam didn't seem to fit into all of this because once I
Nope.
realized that most of this was going to be taking place in Pelphia, I was kind of like, Adam's not going to be here. But Valita screams his name when she wakes up at the very end of the book,
Oh yeah,
which
she
was
does.
also really weird. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that I wish I could. I don't know. I don't even have like a prediction about that. I have
Hmm.
like maybe she dropped into some kind of weird unconscious time vortex or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I
the
have no
biggest
idea.
mystery at this point in my mind, well, there's so freaking
No,
many. I
it's
don't know if I
Adam.
can
It's
even
Adam.
say this
It's
big,
the
but it's
biggest
Adam
mystery
and the
is
whole
Adam.
thing on the
Yeah.
top of the tower.
Yeah.
Those people have technology. They've got who even knows what's going on up there. Okay, so I'm going to double down on my prediction at the end of last episode where I said we're not going to learn about Adam until he tells us past tense about his story. Like we're not going to ever have Adam chapters until he comes back into the main crew in a spectacular way, saving everyone.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen to Adam?
I can't say anything because I already cracked into the next one. So.
Oh my god! Damn it! Am I like immediately
I'm sorry,
wrong?
like
Of
you
course,
asked
I'm
me.
immediately wrong.
I mean, I was wrong about Senlin about
Oh, you're trying to make me feel better. Thank you.
Well, I was wrong about Olivet not being Senlin's kid.
Oh yeah,
I
we're
was
both
super
wrong
wrong
on
about that.
I didn't think it was either. Okay, let me ask you this: what do you think? And I have a prediction here too. What do
Okay.
you think is going to happen? But I want yours first.
Okay.
Between the whole Edith, Maria, Senlin, it's not like a
Oh
love
man.
triangle per se, but like there's some garbage that needs to be taken out before that storyline can
I have
continue.
no. Okay, so I wrote it down because I do have a prediction
Oh wow,
here.
for that?
Yeah.
Wow, I nailed that.
It's not really even much of a predict. Here's what I wrote down. I said, I think Senlin and Edith are going to get together. I know Senlin and Maria have a baby, but they can make it work. I don't know. I just want Edith and Senlin to get together. So, like obviously, Maria and Senlin, like they work, but I don't think they work as well as Edith and Senlin.
Right.
And maybe it's just because of what I've seen. Right, like we haven't had any Maria chapters, which I think we might get in the second in the next book, which would be awesome because I would love to see why Maria is good enough for Senlin.
Right.
No, I mean like I just want Edith and Senlin to get together. Like
Me
I just
too.
love Edith so much, and I've been with her through this whole journey and seen her thought processes on things, and like she really cares so much about Senlin, and like she's looking around this whole ringdom for him, and she's got his hat. Like,
yeah.
I don't
Even
know.
the guy that she's into, she can't fully like or even kind of commit herself to him because the entire time they're trying to get his wife back. It's like
Right.
what a position.
One of the other reasons that I love Edith so much is because she goes and gets Maria.
Right.
She didn't have to do that.
No, that was selfless.
I'm sure part of her was like, this is part of the mission or whatever. I don't know. But like she goes in there and storms into that building and grabs Maria and it's just like, let's go. I know you don't want to be here. Oh, you got a baby? Shit.
Right.
Like, man, like that's brutal. Can you imagine like being in Edith's shoes right there and like realizing the gravity of the situation now? Like,
It's like,
Senlin
oh,
is nowhere to be
no.
found. Not only like is your personal kind of like hope at getting with somebody that you really care about, that avenue seemed fairly clear, and now it's totally clogged up by this baby. sorry all of it. But like that's crushing enough as it is. But Edith is such an awesome person. Like her immediate thoughts seem to be like, oh, this just got like way worse, and not even just on my romantic love life front. This is just bad because we don't know where Senlin is. That's a whole can of worms. I don't know what's going to happen. I think Edith and Senlin are going to get together. That's my prediction because I want it.
Here's what I think is going to happen, and here's what I hope is going to happen. Okay, here's
It's
what I think is
separate
going to.
things.
I know.
Okay.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Maria and Senlin will end the story together, and Edith will die in a heroic way somewhere along the line.
Oh.
Here's what I hope to have happen. Senlin gets with Edith and sails off into like space or something in his new awesome like spaceship, and Maria gets with like Adam or somebody, and it's all okay. It's all okay. I was thinking Adam might also be the bricklayer too, because he's like really anywhere.
Oh, maybe. I wrote down here that maybe Senlin dies and the crew stays together and takes care of Olivet like a big family. That was kind of like one of the things that I thought might happen, is that Senlin would ultimately die, but leave his baby like in the care of this like new family that he's created.
Right, maybe Olivet's the Sphinx.
Okay, Chad, we gotta
get off that.
We gotta keep all of this into like the realm of what we've read so far,
and not your psychotic
like,
maybe land.
like literally, like Scottie Pippen could drop down into the tower and save. Like I don't know, Chad. Like
sure. Fine.
Maybe Doctor Who will show up and it'll all have been
very
a dream.
possible.
Yeah, I have no idea. But yeah, whatever happens, no harm better come to Byron, or I will sue Bancroft for emotional damage because Byron is my favorite character.
He is a
In this book, at
great.
least. Not in the whole series, but in this particular book. I love Byron so much.
I agree with you fully. Oh yeah, I mean, Senlin's probably my favorite. I love him so much. But like Byron is, if I had to pick someone not the main character,
Right.
then Byron would probably be it.
The reason I love Byron so much is because he's, at first, this really, really stuffy guy. He's exactly the stereotype, even without, if you just put aside that he's got a stag for a head.
He's a stag.
So cool. So cool. I see that so clearly in my mind.
Oh, me too.
Right? He has such a heart. Like, he cares a lot about this crew, but he's got like this allegiance to the Sphinx. And he knows the Sphinx like intimately, or so it seems. He takes on Senlin's message to Edith, even though he knows that he's not supposed to. And he would be in a lot of trouble for that. Like,
right.
the Sphinx has, only so much control of everything.
He tells Edith that Senlin is leaving and gives them the opportunity to say goodbye to each other because the Sphinx doesn't want it to happen.
And he even has his own little arc in there.
Yeah.
It's not enough that all these other characters have their arcs and they're all really strong and good, but Byron, he's like, I'm going to go back and, what did he say? He said something like, what would be worse? Like me dying protecting my friends, or being captured and tortured and paraded in front of people that hate me and stuff. And he's just like, you know what? No, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fight and I'm going to do the right thing here. And
yeah, that was a really big moment of him coming out and deciding to actually kick some ass, which he does.
And he's so like witty and cool, and like he's not just like this stuck up butler there for comic relief. And that's why I liked him so much, is because he could have been, and
right.
He wasn't. And I like the stag head thing.
Right. Oh, that's just fantastic. He kind of exemplifies society, like what it is to be human, even though he's like the least human of them all. In his attempt to be so human, he kind of, he doesn't need to be high society, and kind of not high society, but
he's teaching a lot of etiquette. Like he's very well informed on culture.
Yeah, he has this should be done this way. Things should be done the right way. And those are the things that kind of, some of the foundational principles of civilization that kind of separate us from like hunter gatherers, some of these rules that we can kind of like all agree to abide by that make us civil, and he's really into that. And it's interesting in how that he's the one that is like the least human of them all.
Yeah, that's a really good notice. But nothing better happened to, I will burn all my books.
When he lost
Bancroft.
an antler, I was very upset.
Very protective of Byron.
Yes.
Everybody else can die.
Yeah,
except
even
for
Ferdinand, which was a loss.
Oh yeah, that sucked. That was really sad.
It was like an actual dog, and it was
I know.
Oh,
why'd you have
man.
to do that?
I know.
Ferdinand was already cool enough without you making him a dog, Josiah.
I know. And we don't learn about it until
what would really hit
dead.
them the hardest here?
And he like playfully smashes all the soldiers to death. Oh man. So the Red Hand like lobotomizing everyone. I
like
really,
happily.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I think he's a really interesting character. He's by no means my favorite, but he's just like a very, very interesting. He's like he's gone to the other side and comes back, and he knows so much. And like he's the sort of guy who like knows the meaning of the universe, and then when like you learn that he did 50 years later, he's like, "Well, you never asked." And you're like, "What?"
I have a quote here from that actually. Then you kind of touched on it, but I wanted to read it because I really liked it a lot. And this is when like Edith kind of asks the Red Hand like what it was like to die or whatever, and he says, "I was present at the beginning of time. I was there when the first coals of the universe turned red and burned for an age. I was dust floating in a dead black nothing for half an eternity. I was a star when it formed. I was a star when it died. I was a ray of light bolting across the galaxy for 10,000 years, only to be caught and devoured by an oak leaf." I love this so much. I'm not at all certain what happens when it's our time to go, but what a nice thought that is. From dust floating in dead black to being turned into light, shooting across the galaxy to be eaten up by a leaf. Like the cycle goes on, just in a different form. And I think among a few other things, but this being the chief reason, that may be one of the things that contributed to the Red Hand's sudden kind of change in temperament. Like he's all chilled out now.
He's cheery.
Also, it kind of reminded me of, maybe this is the real reason I loved it so much, but it kind of reminded me of what Gandalf says to Pippin in Return of the King. "White shores and beyond, a far green country under a swift sunrise. So that kind of reminded me of
Beautiful.
that. I know that part is so good.
So I can like hear Gandalf saying that in my
Yeah,
head.
right.
And he's because they're talking about like being strong or brave or something, right?
Yeah, and he's like, that doesn't sound so bad. And Gandalf's
Yeah.
like, nah, no, it's not. It's all good, man. Like it's
Yeah.
all
Don't worry about it.
whatever
Even if you
happens
die,
here,
it's
yeah, it's
fine.
gonna be great. Yeah, and I really like that. Like the Red Hand does not necessarily need to be the character that he is. He was kind of the villain at first, and then he got kind of like I'm starting to really think that maybe he is the bricklayer actually.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, and obviously we could be wrong, but let's just for this episode, let's just revel in how cool that would actually be because he seems to be the
Yeah,
one that's the most in the know about everything except for maybe the
totally. Because
Sphinx.
he was saying ridiculous shit
Even in the first
before.
book.
Yeah, even in the
Yeah.
first book, like he was saying, I want to actually go back and read it because he said this line. He accosts Senlin in his room at nighttime, and he says, "I am the something in the night. I am that." And he goes all of these riddling self pronunciations, and it's like,
Yeah.
what?
Do you have a favorite quote?
I do actually. I
Let's
mean,
let her rip.
God, I have so many, but
Yeah. No, read one. Yeah.
okay, so two of them. One of them is very short, and the other one is a little bit longer, and it's one of the beginning of the chapter
Yeah, totally.
quips.
I have
So
one
the
of those
first,
too.
oh, nice. The first one is it says, "It's perfectly all right to not be perfect. A chip or a crack can be precious too." And it's when Senlin is talking about or remembering Maria and her broken tea set. Oh, he's remembering after the play. He remembers the tea set, and he's like, "Oh, it's in the play." And he's like, "Oh no, she told him about the tea set," meaning she got kind of intimate with them. I love that. It's perfectly all right to not be perfect. A chip or a crack can be precious too. Kind of
Yeah.
your mistakes and your imperfections can add to your perfection.
And it's a
I just
weird
like
it's
that a lot.
it's a lofty goal to strive for and
Yeah.
probably not worth the effort, honestly.
Yes. Did you notice that the name of the play was "The Heart is Lost When Love is Found"? It's so like
Yeah.
terrible and also wonderful at the same
Right.
time.
Yeah, I like that. I did notice that. Yeah, that was really good.
Okay, so the other one was the a little quip at the beginning of the chapter. It says, "Oh, how airmen love to say our stars are wrong. They call nature the supreme artist, apparently forgetting that nature also paints our deck chairs with bird droppings and our backs with hairy moles. Pelphians, constellations, what designed by a famous artist and installed by master plumbers, not plopped willy-nilly about the sky by drunken nature. Really, who's to say it's our stars that are wrong?"
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And it
And
was
it's
just
such a
like,
good example of Pelphia. Like that sums
yeah.
up
Oh,
Pelphia
the
so
hubris.
well. Yeah.
Drunken nature.
We have better stars than the sky
Yeah, and
does.
it's like constantly breaking all the time.
They have to send Hod's up by a balloon to
Yeah.
fix it. But they don't care.
Yeah, what was your favorite chapter quip?
Don't saw off your arm to feed a dog. You only have two arms, and the world is full of dogs. I really like this one, and to me, it essentially means don't give in to people that are trying to hurt you or gain something for their own benefit that is like ultimately a negative outcome for yourself. Even if you do it a couple times,
Say that
you'll
for me
be
one more time. I need that again.
what
Because I thought about this, your definition, because I thought about it after it, and I was like, I hope Evan gives me. So I'm so glad that you're mentioning this. Hit
oh
me
yeah.
with your definition one more time.
Um, so I mean, essentially to me, it means like don't give in to people that are trying to hurt you or gain something for their own benefit that is ultimately a negative outcome for yourself. Like even if you
Ooh.
do it a couple times, you'll be left with nothing and more people will come to take advantage of you. And not only will that happen, but you'll be in a worse state to deal with it than you
Right.
were before. Like that's kind of like what I got
Ooh,
from it
that's
is
good. Yeah, don't play their
yeah.
game.
Yeah, and like, you know, the world is the key part in that sentence is like the world is full of dogs. If you let that happen and you let somebody like really take advantage of you, it's just going to keep happening. You know, like you appeasing somebody just because you don't want to deal with it or, you know, or you kind of like
It's hard.
crumpling under a situation. Oh, it is really difficult. I do it
Mhm.
I do it all the time. But yeah, like sticking up for yourself, you know, like it's going to keep happening and you don't want to be left with no arms like when it does keep happening. You know, you can't
Right.
control it still happening, but you can't control your reaction to it. And you can like decide not to give into that pressure.
And you gain nothing but lose everything.
God, that's like
God,
one
that was a
in like
good one.
10,000 different examples of just amazing sentences and like just great little tidbits
Oh,
of
little
thought
tidbits.
that, like, what is going on in this man's
Yes,
head all the time?
I
Jesus.
know. He has beautiful thoughts, Josiah
Yeah,
Bancroft. Like,
absolutely.
okay, in chapter 5, someone's hating on the Duke, and he says he realizes about himself. He was dressing the Duke in the rags of his own insecurity. Oh, it's like
Boom.
8 words, and it says so much.
Yeah, it does. And you know what's even like,
Gorgeous.
the ultimate irony of that is like, yeah, maybe you are, but you're not like wrong either. Like ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't wrong about it. You can be dressing somebody in the rags of your own insecurity and be right about
Right.
their, you know what I mean? Like you can be insecure and still the other person is an asshole, but
Right.
like
Just
you're
because you're
also
looking through a
being
filter
right.
doesn't mean
Yeah,
that
it's
it's not the color
interesting.
that it is, but be aware that you're looking through the filter of your
Ah,
own
man,
making.
it's
You know,
so
it's
wild.
so good. It's so good.
This is definitely a series that I will absolutely be rereading this, and I feel
Oh,
like it'd
yeah.
almost be better as a reread.
I agree. I agree.
Like if this podcast is up for 10 more years, I could
We're
see
coming.
us
We're hitting
reading
it
it
again.
again.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be so good. Take two on this. Okay. I lied and that the other one was my favorite one because I'm like scrolling through my notes and I just remembered one more that I love so much I have to read
Yeah.
it. Okay. It's why do we call a dishonest person two-faced? Is it really so honest to wear the same face day in and day out, regardless of our mood, our condition, or the event? We are not clocks. Have a face for every occasion, I say. Be honest. Wear a mask.
Is that the journalist?
Yeah, it's the
I
journalist. It's a
love
little
that
blurb. Oh
journalist.
my gosh, be
Yeah.
honest, wear a mask. So good.
I have a question.
Okay.
This has to do with the end of the book, so we're right where we want to be. Do you think that Senlin, and I don't know if I missed something here, but like, do you think that Senlin actually did pledge some sort of allegiance to Mara? He had to do it, right?
Right.
But in like the way that I read it all, there wasn't a whole lot of his own internal dialogue there. Like it
Right.
felt like we were just kind of watching it happen. Like I don't know, is he not
I don't
really like he doesn't Senlin doesn't seem to like to be controlled, right? Senlin doesn't like the idea that someone is pulling strings on his own fate or destiny or whatever. He seems to really like to be in control. So I think that maybe once he realized, and this is I guess a little bit of a prediction of mine, the last book is called The Fall of Babel. And the Sphinx was introduced so early on in this series that I think we're going to see some allegiances turn. I don't know. I don't for some reason personally I felt like maybe he was actually pledging some sort of allegiance to the Hod King, not necessarily Mara, but just the cause. I don't know. He sees how these people are being treated. Maybe Senlin really does think like maybe it's time for this tower to just go away. Like it's been
okay.
nothing but bad for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that he is definitely like you're not wrong. I think that he is using all of the this tower should be different. It's not what it seems on its surface and it's full of dogs and bad people. I think he's using that energy and that belief inside of him to fuel the passion behind his pledge to Luke Marat. But I don't think that his pledge was word for word genuine. I think that he's merely, like any good lie, it's woven with truth, and only just slight little things are tweaked and that are actually lies. And so I think most of what he said was totally him being truthful and that the Sphinx manipulated me. I'm very
Right.
aware and the negative things that the tower has brought about me and that it does to everybody. But I don't think that he was being fully genuine and that he's like, I'm a Hod, I'm your man. I think
He's doing what he can.
yeah, he's doing what he can to do it, but at the same time admitting, like, okay, things do need to change. Like, there's a lot of truth in his reasons to falsely give his allegiance to Luke.
I like that. I didn't think about it like that because I kind of jumped to a conclusion, but I think you've got the more kind of like sussed out.
I hope
Like
so.
you have a more
But
thorough opinion about this than I do. Yeah,
well, I thought about it for a long time,
yeah,
especially because I was like, we all have mentioned multiple times our love and kind of possessive nature towards feelings towards Senlin. And so I thought about that where I was like, is he being a Marat? Is he gonna be Luke's man? And I was like, no, I don't think so.
it's probably
I don't
more
think so.
complicated than that. Like
Yeah,
Senlin's more complicated than that. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, for sure.
I hope so. Now about Taru though, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think that he's Senlin's man, or is he kind of still on
Um,
for himself?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, he seems pretty on board with Sinlin, but I don't know. Like he kind of sketched me out in the baths. You know,
Yeah,
he's just
yeah.
kind of got that character about him, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. This is kind of a weird question, but I had to ask you.
Okay.
I feel like I'm kind of throwing Senlin under the bus a lot in this episode.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you think Senlin secretly wanted Maria to be happy in Pelphia? Like maybe
Yes.
it would have just been easier and he feels
Uh-huh.
closer to Edith after everything they've been through, and that's why he was acting the way that he was?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think you just nailed that. Yes. The feeling that we had when we were like, oh, nice, that buttons that up and kind of leaves Senlin to go about the rest of the tower solving its problems and maybe being king and sailing off into the
Yeah.
future of the I think that was not by accident, the fact that we
Right.
felt that way, and it was very well done in that it was how Senlin felt, because he was so quick to be like, cool, 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 she's all good, no guilt, I'm gonna go on, and like that really answers a lot of questions with Edith. It makes his life a whole lot more simple.
Seriously, it's like if you broke up with somebody and then like immediately texted the person that you had actually been talking
Yeah.
to like while the breakup was happening. It was just like, dude, you're gonna go to that hotel and just immediately send Edith a
That's what he
cigar moth
does.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does.
Cigar
Yeah,
moth. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you agreed with that because
Oh yeah, hard.
yeah, like I don't know, I
I
don't
think he was
like
kind of like, darn it. And then I think, we kind of have to get unmade in order to be remade sometimes. And I think his unmaking, because wasn't it when he realized, maybe it wasn't, when he was in the bucket? Is that when he realized that she was saying things to him?
or is it maybe a little bit when they're like in the zealot camp or something like
Yeah,
it was in
he
that
has he has
spot.
an opportunity to like relay that conversation word by word by word over and over and over again. And that's when he comes to the realization that like, oh, she was saying all these things. And it's like he kind of had to get out his shovel, start digging a little bit through that in order to figure it out, because he didn't want to know that.
Yeah, like I don't think it's something that he would even admit to himself. Or
Right,
maybe he would
right,
later, and that was what will lead him to be with Edith or something.
right.
Like,
And that's why I was
I
saying
don't
it's
know.
kind of unmade. He was in the worst. He was so low. He like none of his own ego was in the way or his own wants. It was like he's just trying to make it step by step. And so he kind of realizes in that situation, oh darn.
This is a question I had about Duke Willem.
Okay.
There was one prediction that I was totally wrong about in the last episode. That was all of it being Senlin and Maria's baby.
Yeah, we were both wrong on that.
The Duke told Maria that he would bring all of it into like his good graces, so to speak, if Maria agreed to give him a son. My
Right.
question to you is, knowing what we know about Willem now, do you think that he would have kept to that deal?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. There's no
No.
way.
He said, and I believe him, that if Senlin shows his face around, then he would slit her
Yeah, right.
throat.
And I think that that contributed a lot to Maria. Like Maria knew that too, even though she
Yeah.
didn't know exactly what had transpired between Senlin and the Duke, like that exact conversation. She like Maria knows better than anybody like what her actual situation is. Oh God, I thought about that for a second, like after I finished the book, because I was kind of just I was really thinking about the Duke and Maria and just like that whole gross ass
Hmm.
situation, and it just creeped me out even more. It just made me hate him even more. It's just like,
Yep.
yeah, he probably wouldn't have even kept to that deal. He probably would have killed that kid
Yeah.
anyway.
Now, I don't think that Maria thought that. I think she was like, if I
Really? I
just
think
play, yeah,
no. I
because
think she.
or
I
else
don't think so.
she would have been yes trained. She would have been on the yes train the first time around if she thought that eventually he would kill her daughter, right? She would have been trying to get out of there. But I
But no,
think,
she couldn't get out of there. That's the point. Like she felt like she was like she had to have like someone had to come in and like physically put that guy in his place because I mean because Senlin would have been able to spirit her away at some point, or at least he's capable enough to pull it off. Like we know that he's capable enough to pull it off, but Maria doesn't. Maria only sees Senlin as he was before they got
right.
separated. So it's like, yeah, like Maria in where she's at, she's just like this man has such this like overbearing presence and control over my life. He's such a terrible person. There's no way I can get out of this situation. So I just got to save whoever I can,
Right.
and
She's in
hope that
save
he'll,
mode,
right.
reduce
Yeah. Yeah.
damage. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
Yeah. Cause like, I mean, if she could get out of there, she would, but she can't, that's like the
Yeah.
nature of like, that's an abusive relationship in and of itself. It's just like, the mark of a really abusive relationship is like when the person that's abusing you is also the one that's like keeping you safe, or at least you think that he's the only one that could keep you safe, so it's like,
Right.
yeah,
That's
that's
so effed.
really toxic. Yeah, like really
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah,
And
that's like
yeah, I
insanity
really
toxic.
hope. I don't think I like anybody in these books less than Wilhelm, and it was a
Yeah.
quick. He was barely in this series.
He's not just evil, he's evil that's really good at pretending to not be evil.
Yeah, and he has a lot, not a lot of, not as much like relatively not as much power as like the Sphinx or anything, but Pelthea is not like a nothing ringdom
Right.
either. Like there's
Right.
a lot of connection there. Seems like there's a lot of money and influence. That's a big part of these books too. I feel like is I think that Bancroft is really criticizing like the upper class, the way that it looks down on people that don't have the same privileges and don't have the same kind of connections and influence and stuff like that. I mean, he hits it pretty on the nose in a lot of different instances. This kind of like working underclass who, nobody takes them seriously. Nobody believes anything they have to say. Like they're kind of just like killing them indiscriminately.
Tell me, what was your thoughts about the king? Because he was so kind of hunky dory for a little while. Like you're privy to some conversations between him and like his brother and maybe even the Duke, where he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right, fine. We're gonna have to attack him and kill everybody." And he just kind of like,
He's just a figurehead. Like, I mean,
okay, he was such a dirtbag, kinda. But he's like helping kids and stuff too. Like I don't know, he was really weird.
yeah, the king was really weird. I don't know. I think that he's not the one with the actual power, and it's pretty plain that he's not the
Yeah,
actual. Did the king ever find out that his son was killed?
I don't think we were ever there for his
His
learning of
son was
that.
killed with a coat rack.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ugh.
However, he kind of seems like his son was the sort of guy, and the king's the sort of guy that, like, nah, I bet she's not going to lose much sleep over it, you know? This is my last question. And for this one, I want to zoom out. Do you think that this book is set in Earth's future or in its past?
I don't think it's set on Earth at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like I think it's
I
just a
disagree.
complete. Really? You think
Oh,
they're gonna
yeah.
tie it all in?
Oh, I mean, okay, think about it. So we've got the Tower of Babel, right? Real place or like
Yeah.
biblical place.
Yeah.
He's mentioned the Ararat. That was the mountain that Noah's Ark settled on. He's mentioned that the camp that Luke Marat's camp they're going to is by a ringdom called Nineveh. Nineveh, this is actually really interesting. And I don't know if he did this I think he did this on purpose. Nineveh was the story. Do you know Nineveh?
No.
Do you know about Nineveh? Okay, so in the Bible, Jonah and the whale, Jonah and the whale?
Yeah.
Yeah, so God tells Jonah to go to this city of Nineveh and repent. Jonah says, "No, no, no, God, I don't want to do that." And then he boards, trying to run from God, he boards a ship and they set sail. The ship is beset with terrible luck and weather and just awful things for like 3 days. And the sailors, being kind of a superstitious crew, blame Jonah because they just think something's up with this guy. It's him who's giving us bad luck. Turns out they're right. They throw him overboard. Jonah gets swallowed by a whale or a fish. He spends 3 days and nights in the belly of a fish before he goes, "Okay, God, fine. I'll go to Nineveh like you wanted me to." And then he gets washed up, spit out, and washed up on a thing, there's got to be some sort, when Senlin goes into the wall of the tower, that's kind of belly of the whaley.
Right. Yeah, totally.
He's doing some sort of I haven't quite figured it out yet, but there's some sort of Jonah and the whale
Right. I mean,
comparison.
I see exactly what you're saying, and I think that those comparisons are valid, but I don't see the connection to like I think that those are just connections. Those are nods to different like literature and fables and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I don't know. I think they're nods to that, and also
I don't know, man. That's kind
he's
of a
saying
stretch. Like,
but I mean, think about it. So like the troglodytes or whatever,
yeah,
they're not alive anymore. They mentioned sea
true.
crustaceans
Yeah,
being like dead. Like these are animals that used to live. Like, I mean, sea crustaceans, I imagined, were alive at the beginning when the Tower of Babel were. So like some climactic event has happened. I don't know. I don't know.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for one
I
thing,
think it's Earth's future.
maybe, but like, I think I don't know. I don't see it being necessary to the story at all.
No, it's not. It's like kind of a nerdy.
Right. Yeah. I I mean, I think it would be cool. It's kind of like in the Wheel of Time.
Right.
They kind of do that in Shadow Rising. They like tie it all in, and there's like
Right. It like
people in
makes
airplanes
reference.
and shit.
Right.
But it's not like really crucial that's actually. I mean, I guess it is actually in the Wheel of Time if you think about it, or whatever. We don't have to talk about the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
I mean, we can if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
It's almost 4 a.m.
No.
Oh my god!
This is how much we love you guys. I'm gonna ask him when he's on the podcast.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to hear it. I at least want to know like what influences he had going into this, because I want to read them because I haven't.
Yeah. I really want to know if he's religious.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily need to be devoutly religious or anything like that to be able to really appreciate. I mean, dude, it's just like Western literature in general.
Oh yeah,
I mean, my God, like the amount of influence.
He's not getting deep in the Bible. He's just like making, like you said, little nods to it that are very well known. You know?
I mean, there's like stuff that's probably written by like agnostics, atheists, like anti-theists, and stuff that's totally ripping stuff out of it. Like the Bible is chock full of stuff that you can use, and obviously, like a lot of that's been there's some rehashed stuff in that from other stuff and things like that. But it's just like I wouldn't even be surprised to hear that like. Maybe Bancroft is just like, no, I'm not religious at all. That book just rocks, and like I got so much good stuff out of that, combined with like this other stuff. Yeah. I think we're gonna have quite a few questions for Mr. Bancroft.
I'm really excited for this interview, and if you guys have any questions, please email us at book.reviews.kill@gmail.com, and we will make sure that your question gets answered.
All right, with that, we're gonna wrap it on up. These books are quickly becoming some of my favorite that I've ever read. They stand out as unique and carefully crafted masterworks of this genre. I'm so happy to be reading them here, not only with you, Chad, but with you listening and reading along with us right now. I only wish there were 60 more of these so we could have a book for each level of the tower.
Ooh, gosh, that was poetic. I am also very glad that we are reading these, and not only that we're reading them in general, but that we're reading them in the time of our podcast journey that we are. I feel, like I said, I'm going to give you so much credit for picking the books and the order in which we did. Like, if we would have done this book first, we wouldn't have been ready. We wouldn't have been up to it.
No.
We would have been trying to figure out like how to be good podcasters and present ourselves properly, and just like time, how to work with each other. And this, we were ready for this book, and this was the perfect time for it to come along. And I'm so honored to read it on this podcast, have you guys listen, and to read it with you, Evan.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Really appreciate you being here. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.